Hey, thanks for the introduction, and just wanted to say good afternoon to the Michigan HIMSS chapter for all those that you were able to make it in person, and for those that maybe hear this recording later. My name is Eric Bourne. I'm going to kick just real quick over to the bio slide, and then we'll jump right in. But I've got 22 years in the staffing and recruiting industry, so we are in and around jobs all the time, in and around customers hiring. For the last 13 years, I've been exclusively in healthcare. Kind of ranging from rev cycle, clinical, and the last 9 years since we launched our IT group, heavily focused in the IT technology sector. So really have a strong visibility and vantage point. With 14 offices, 2,500 consultants nationwide, we have really deep insights into what's happening around the nation. So just last thing about me: married, 3 kids, my pooch Cookie. Life is good on the home front. So what are we going to talk about today? What are the learning objectives? Where are the top jobs? What are the top jobs going on in HIT and Informatics? Where's the job growth? Where are the trends? What should you be looking for? What are the key skills that employers are looking to see from the candidate pool? And then we'll shift a little bit around salary expectations and finding the perfect job. Like, what does that look like in the event that you're in transition mode or you're coming out of college looking to break in? We'll try and cover some of that stuff at a high level in the first 20-25 minutes of this call. All right, so some key stats to get started with. This is from Career Builder. 20% of companies, and this is non-industry specific, so are going to look to add headcount in 2017 in their IT department. That's not stay flat, that's add new help. 67% in healthcare expect to hire more full-time staff, so you can see healthcare is really trying to play catch-up. There's been a lot of initiatives that are driving employee count. If you look at HIMSS Analytics, the data on the average side of healthcare IT employee, like shops, number of employees, has risen dramatically over the last decade. You've seen significant job growth in the healthcare IT sector, and that's going to continue to grow, right? 13.5% over the next couple of years is the job growth expectations. So not only has it grown, but you can expect to see it continue. And then lastly, 13.3% wage and salary growth in the information sector. So IT jobs across industries are starting to grow. And the good news is the data is healthcare is playing catch up, right? Healthcare is historically a little bit of a lagger in compensation, but they're starting to really, I think, realize in order to compete for top talent, they're having to really reevaluate and take a look at what some of those salary bands are. So just a couple of key stats to prime the conversation right from the outset. All right, so top HIT trends. Where are they? What are they looking at? And this is a KPMG in collaboration with Chime poll earlier this year. When they were polling their CIO and leadership groups, they said 38% are looking to optimize their recent investments in their EMR platforms. So they've just added significant technology into their EMR systems. Now what they're looking to do is augment and add to those feature sets, as well as really just kind of fine tune and optimize what they've already invested in. 21% are looking at pop health technology. Right? How do we take a look at the analytics behind all this data and understand how to use it in a more robust way to impact healthcare downstream instead of kind of the acute care that walks in the door? Consumer, clinical, and operational analytics, kind of tying in right in on the pop health side of the house. We've got all this data. Now what do we do with it? All right, virtual telehealth. I was just up in Toronto 2 weeks ago now, and saw just an amazing demo at a Health Achieve conference where you walk in, the patient's on the bedside, they need a specialist to come on in, and especially by virtue of how disparate the landscape is up there. There's a lot of miles in between facilities, especially in some of those northern territories. They had this technology where a cart rolls right up to the desk, you dial in right to the doctor, you're pretty much face-to-face talking to your doctor, even though they're miles and miles away. Just really neat. There's voice recording, so they have it, integrates in with their EHR. Just super, super cool what's happening in that technology platform. 7% rev cycle system replacements, and then 6%. There's still people that are looking to replace their ERP systems, their EMR systems in some capacity. So those are some of the trends to be paying attention to. Another way to look at it, and again, this is what we hear in talking to our clients. If you were at HIMSS at the national scale earlier this year, there was a huge kind of push in those top 2 areas around security and business intelligence data utilization, right? Security, how do I keep my patient data safe, my PHI protected? Business intelligence data utilization is I now have access to more information than you can shake a stick at. What do I do with it? How do I use it in a meaningful way to improve, outcomes, to lower costs to the patient? The cloud continues to be huge. There's nothing new there, but it's still a massive uptick. There's still more and more things migrating to the cloud. The software as a service, you're seeing more and more of that start to bleed into healthcare IT. Interoperability, EHR improvements, we talked a little bit earlier about that. The healthcare Internet of Things continues to embolden and broaden. There's more and more conversation around it. That's the wearables, that's all the things that we're seeing, that can, where sensors can pull data. What do we do with the data? How do we access it and make it more meaningful to, again, improve outcomes in healthcare? Telemedicine, virtual care, patient engagement continues to be a hot topic. AI, machine learning, how do we leverage, really the technology of tomorrow in a way that's going to help us drive, healthcare IT. Macro value-based pay, ACA, repeal, replace, renew, again, are a lot of the hot topics and trends that we're paying attention to across the customer continuum. So, and just going back real quick to security, blockchain, I should have mentioned it there, is gaining just more and more conversation, right? It hasn't quite hit the adoption phase yet, but you're starting to hear more and more providers talking about it. How do we use it? How do we incorporate it into our technology stack? Okay, so spend changes. This is from the HIMSS every year. HIMSS puts out I think, a very comprehensive, what they call, I think it's the leadership, their annual leadership report. I think this is their 25th year, 26th year doing it. Ever since I got into the HIT space, it's one of the first sources I look to for great information. But it ranks, right? Percent of IT leaders expecting increases in spend in their individual departments. And you can see security was a clear #1. Mobility, BI, big data, cloud, data center consolidation. I'm not going to read through them all, but you can get a sense, right? And obviously, if they're going to increase spend in these areas, there's typically jobs that follow. So again, if you're looking for a sense of the types of roles that are going to dominate future hiring needs, really the HIMSS report gives great visibility into where the puck is going in addition to where it's at today. So just really, really good data I wanted to point out. All right, critical roles to success. Which IT roles are the most critical for enabling your organization to achieve success? Right, and then they had a litany of job titles to pull from. And it's interesting, project management continues to be a very, very critical factor for success. And anyone who's been in IT knows that a good PM can make or break a project, right? There's complexities. You've got to manage a multitude of factors throughout the course of that project. It's not just about managing budget and timelines anymore. It's about managing, complex technologies, managing the needs of the patient with the needs of the business, managing, the egos associated with various projects, et cetera, et cetera. So it continues to be an area of job growth, an area where not only is it critical, but if you look on the next row over, how difficult is it to find, right? Hospitals are reporting that finding good PMs is also very, very hard to do. Architects, programmers, developers, software engineers, a lot of the networking cloud-based opportunities continue to be critical success factors for hiring at the healthcare level, right? And again, the second column was around what are the hardest jobs for me to fill within my hospital, within my health system, within my healthcare plan. Programmers and developers are hard to find, information security, networking, and then the architects and PMs round out some of the top roles that employers are reporting challenges in finding. So again, as you're looking at entry to mid-level type career opportunities, some of these roles you need to work into and kind of get the baseline, skills to groom yourself for these roles. But some of these are opportunities you can seek out today, mostly because there's shortages, there's talent gaps in what our employers and the healthcare systems are finding out there. All right, I touched briefly on salary. Again, healthcare historically has been a laggard behind other industries, especially banking and finance, to some degree the insurance areas. So it's good to see, right, that a lot of the IT leaders are expecting increases, and you can see the areas that they reported having the most expectations around change year over year, right? So you can see that a lot of people are anticipating growth and increased salaries, in these key areas. So that's the good news. If we're in healthcare IT, I think you'll continue to see that trend. because, again, job growth in healthcare, job growth in IT in general, and the complexities of technologies being added to the healthcare sector continue to make it critical for us not only to hire, but to retain our key resources. So again, that's some good news that should be welcome addition to everyone on this call. All right, top HIT jobs, and I'm going to just burn through this, and I'm going to tell you what we're going to do with it, okay? Let me go back just one. So Lucy and Jerry had a chance to just send me out some of the job titles associated with the chapter, right? And I really took the biggest representative samplings, right? There's a lot of PMs, a lot of leaders, a lot of analysts, a lot of developers, a lot of systems people. So really just trying to pick some of the ones that I thought would be most prevalent to the audience of the Michigan HIMSS chapter, right? And what we're going to do is just talk about the trends. In some areas, I was able to boil it down to Michigan specific. In other areas where I didn't have enough data, what I did was just provide you with a national sampling, okay? And here's what it looks like. So it'll be the job title. It'll be the supply is the number of resumes. So this is scraped from all the major job boards, all the minor job boards, anything that you can look at out there. This is a data aggregator tool that pulls from all of them, and then it puts together custom reports. So I can do it down to the regional level, to the zip code, to the state, to the national. And obviously, the smaller you try and drill down, the less sample size you have to pull from. But it's all the people that are posting resumes, all the companies that are posting jobs, and through that, you start to pull out the data, and it tells you what are the salary bands, what are the number of jobs posted, what are the number of candidates actively seeking work. So it's a really good way for us as hiring leaders to get visibility into what are the jobs and how hard are some of them to recruit for. So we'll start with informatics nurse specialist, healthcare informatics. I know Cheryl's going to spend some time from a real personal level in the second half of this call on that topic, but you can see, again, the demand is the number of postings, the supply is the active number of candidates, right? So I was a little shocked to see on the hiring indicator, it was only a 44. I would have thought this to be in the 20s based on what we see in here, but again, this is what the data aggregator tool pulls out. But you can see there's a lot more postings than there are active candidates, right? Again, Cheryl's going to talk a little bit more about her transition into this career and what that looks like later on in the presentation today. Medical records, health information technicians, all right? Again, the top line is national. You can see it's a much bigger sample size. The bottom line is I pull all of Michigan, right? And you can see it's a little bit harder to hire this skill set in Michigan than it is elsewhere in the nation. A lot more postings respective to the number of active candidates. So again, an area that's typically more of an mid-level entry point. A lot of people start in the records, gain familiarity with the system, right? And if they show the aptitude and strengths, able to kind of maneuver in, they can start to move into more of the mid to higher tier types of job opportunities. So we always find this to be a great way for somebody to break in, learn it as a user, and then really start to apply those learnings into higher level opportunities within the org chart. All right, the next couple are going to be around management. This first one's specific to Michigan, but again, the hiring indicators are bordering on the red, right? Which means really, really hard to find. And at the end, when I start talking about looking for jobs, you'll see it's harder to find those leadership roles, right? So people that have strong leadership traits, it's a great place to be right now. There's more projects happening, there's job growth, there's a need as the number of employees in healthcare IT departments grow, there's a need for more leaders at the manager, director, and higher levels to really take on leadership roles and responsibilities. The project management is what we talked about, a lot more complex projects. Very hard to find PMs in this sector, all right? The job slice I looked at is over the last 2 years, from November 2015 to 2017, 18,000 job posts, about 1,500 active candidates. So it's a challenging role to fill, and you're looking within 7,000 total available workforce amongst all those job boards, right? As a recruiter, job boards are only a part of the equation. It's that latent candidate pool that you really need to tap into. But again, as an HR department that's really reliant upon that as a source of hiring, you're going to find a lot of challenges in getting people onboarded quickly. All right, you see the healthcare director, 21 on the hiring indicator, supply demand. This is nationwide. I didn't have a strong subset of Michigan-only data, but a very, very critical role, right? As departments get bigger, We need people with the skills to lead, manage, not only the people aspects, but the budgetary aspects, the technology decisions, critical skill sets. So big opportunity for people in that capacity. Business analysts, you're starting to see more PMO along with the project management needs. There's the need for the business analyst to help work with the business to document and identify what those needs are. Nationally, harder to find skill specific to Michigan, right in the same suite, right? It's one of the more challenging hires that you'll see. Supply demand continue to be out of balance. So business analysts, again, if you have that baseline, business understanding, the workflow, the process, how healthcare works, you can parlay that into the IT group and really help, kind of connect the dots between how the business works and how technology leverages, how technology helps the business run better, cheaper, faster. So it's, I think, a great way for people to break into those IT departments and start to grow and groom their skill sets. Computer systems analysts, you have some of the analyst and developer roles continue to be challenging to find. I'll end with the information security. It was the big buzz last year at HIMSS, or earlier this year, I should say, at HIMSS. Nationally, 16, 20 in Michigan. You're going to continue to see some stats on information security, job skills gap for the next 20 years, 0% unemployment predicted for the next 5 years, 2 million jobs will go vacated between now and 2019. It is a fast-growing area and another place for people to get in, right? We're hearing a lot of stories of health systems that are taking people that have just curiosity, high aptitude for learning, system savvy, and they're taking them and slotting them into these areas because they can't find them elsewhere. So these are great conversations to have internally within your own health systems because there's a need, right? A lot of hospitals are starting to build their own security departments, where in the past they used to really be kind of a bolt-on in the infrastructure group, right? You're really starting to see defined people owning this segment of the business. So just some areas that we wanted to highlight. How do you get the job, right? In addition to technical skills, we get this question all the time. Eric, what are hiring leaders looking for? Candidates come in all the time and say, I've been on some interviews and I can't seem quite to land, but I have the technical skills. What's up? Well, here's I think one very, very good indication of what hiring leaders are looking for, right? You see kind of going left to right, what the most important skills were reported by hiring leaders and what the difficulty in recruiting is. And the two that stand out are leadership and creativity and innovation, right? Leadership, we spent some time on earlier. Creativity and innovation, I think some of that might be the cultural nuances associated with the millennials, where a lot of people say you have to just point them in the right direction and they'll go, and I'm looking for people to figure it out. I don't find that to be particularly true if you hire the right people, but what they're saying is I'm looking for people to come in and help figure stuff out and not need to be told how to do things. So when you're interviewing, pull out examples of times where you were put on a project, you guys got stuck and you didn't wait for someone else to help you. You jumped in and you said, hey, right, I was doing a little bit of homework. Here's what I came up with. I think this might apply to what we're looking at. Hiring leaders are saying that's a critical skill, right? So some of the things that I wanted to point out there is the important skills outside of the technology skill sets that you bring to the table. And then lastly, your steps to success in the job search before I turn this over to Cheryl. I'm going to put them up here. Let me go back one. A lot of things we get questions on are the cover letter, right? My response to the cover letter is if you're going to do one, make it specific to the job. Don't make it don't make it just a one-size-fit-all cover letter that you send out to every single job you're looking at. It should be very detailed and specific to the actual job that you're responding to. Otherwise, resume is going to do most of the heavy lifting. On the resume, I know you guys are muted. I don't think many of you have the ability to talk, but answer this question in your own mind or write it down on a sheet of paper, right? But how long do you think a corporate recruiter looks at your resume before they make a yes-no decision? Yes, I'm going to put them in the pile to consider. Nope, not the right skill set we're looking for. Right? 7 seconds is the answer that you should have written down. Right? I've read 8 seconds. You'll talk to some people and they'll say, 10 seconds. The reality is it happens fast. In 10 seconds, you pretty much look at the name, you look at their job titles, and you look at their last job. They're making very, very quick decisions because they're managing generally 30 to 35 jobs in their job queue. They don't have time to sit there and pore over resumes and really figure out if you've got what it takes. So there's an art to writing a resume that will stand out and get in the yes pile every single time. You should be talking to people that can help you figure that out. Networking, I know Cheryl's going to hit this too. Networking, I put that in all caps for a reason. 85% of all jobs are found by somebody in your first or second degree network. That means 15 out of 100 are found putting a job response to something off the job boards, right? It is critical that you are finding the jobs that you're looking for and then finding a way in. LinkedIn makes it super easy. I put social media second. LinkedIn makes it so easy for you to see, hey, who else do I know at ABC Corp? Right? And then you find somebody in your network that can help you get to the top of the pile. It's critical. If you need help working on your networking skills, you should call me or call somebody in your mentor group that can help you learn that skill because it's critical for advancement. Social media, a lot of employers today, guess what? They're Googling your name the minute that you make the top of the yes pile. What's your Facebook profile look like, right? For a new college grad, is it a bunch of pictures with beer bongs, or is it a bunch of pictures with you at networking groups and stories and articles that you liked, etc. And yes, I just said to myself, I can't believe I said beer bong on a presentation. But what are they seeing on your social media? What are they looking at? Right? They're paying attention to it, so you should too. References, you should have 3 to 5 ready to go at all times. They should be people that managed you, not friends of friends and people on the team. It should be managers, directors, people that are that were responsible for working with you and managing your workflow on a day in, day out basis. Critical. I can't tell you how many times people aren't managing their references the right way in their job search. And then lastly, a lot of people say, I interviewed last week, Eric, what should I do? What's the appropriate timetable to follow up? That's one of the hardest questions to answer because it depends. But my general rule of thumb is try and set the expectations when you leave the interview to say, awesome, I really enjoyed it today, sir or ma'am. Thank you so much for your time. What's an appropriate expectation to set for follow-up? When will you reach out to me, or when is it acceptable for me to follow up? I think if you do that, leaving your interview, you won't have any anxiety around, am I being too pushy or am I being too persistent? Set those before you leave so you know exactly when to follow up. And that's the best advice I can offer in that regard. Okay. Lastly, I'm going to close with some job interview tips. Again, I get questions all the time. It's been 33 years since I've interviewed Eric. I'm looking for that career transition. I just don't know what to do. So at a very high and fast level, I'd say the number one most important thing is be prepared. All right? Have multiple copies of your resume printed. Don't run out in the interview where people are looking around going, oh, let me go see if I can print one out. You're prepared. You're a professional. You've got more than enough on hand ready to rock and roll. How many times you get to the end of the interview and they say, all right, what questions do you have? You should have 20 of them, right? You should have a bank of them ready to go. And throughout the interview, you've formulated more smart questions based upon the dialogue that you've heard. Specific examples and outcomes. What are things specific to your resume that you want to speak to when somebody says, tell me about a time you tackled a complex project, right? You should have multiple examples to pull from and be able to weave that into the dialogue of the interview. Specifics, tangible, objective, not subjective results, but really objective results that you can point to. And then the last thing is know the background information of the role, know the company. In today's world, you can get on LinkedIn and figure out who Eric Bourne is, who Cheryl Parker is, who Jerry Moran is, who Lucy Mancini Newell is. You can find our backgrounds in advance and understand who we are and how to kind of navigate the interview accordingly. Be confident, know yourself, know your skills, look the part. If you're not sure, suit and tie every time. Right? If it's a technology shop and they're a little bit dressed down, it's kind of the rule of the consultant. Always dress better than the customer, never dress better than the boss. And then lastly, be yourself. Don't try and be someone you're not. You don't want to work for a company that thinks you're one person when you're really a totally different persona. Be who you are. Connect with the people. People hire people they like. And then my rule of thumb is I can get people to smile or laugh. I feel like I'm breaking down barriers and building that relationship. So just some of the things I wanted to share before I turn that over to Cheryl. So since we're holding questions to the end, I'm going to go on ahead and give up the mic and give up the presentation stack. And Cheryl Parker, you're going to go on ahead and take over the second half of the presentation.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay, Eric?
I can hear you.
Excellent. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much to the Michigan HIMSS chapter for inviting me today, and to my dear friend Lucy. We've worked together for years and years. We were consultants together. And Eric, that was some really interesting information. I'm going to hit you up for a favor later on that information. But one of the reasons Lucy invited me to come and join this presentation today is that I really did that mid-career switch. And she wanted me to talk about kind of that personal, how did it go? What did I do? What advice can I give to any mid-career clinician who's looking to change paths? And I've got lots. This is my 40th year as a registered nurse. My first 20 years were as a clinician. I was primarily an emergency department nurse, but I also did telemetry, I did long-term care, I did travel nursing, I did home health, I did a little bit of a lot of things. But in my mid-30s, I started looking at my colleagues in the emergency department and realizing that, I really was going to get older. And I really, really, really didn't want to be in my 50s and 60s still struggling to make a 12-hour day in the emergency room. So I figured I better start looking at some opportunities to switch. And I will tell you that it was a pretty fortuitous event that I switched the way I did. I went back to school. I got my master's degree in nursing thinking I would go into academia. Now, the problem is that the biggest thing I learned out of my master's degree was that I didn't belong in full-time academia, at least at that point in my career. So I got out. I was about 39 at that point, and I'm literally sitting there going, oh my goodness, what am I going to do now? I've got a master's degree, but the plan I had didn't work. And this is a true story, and if you've heard me speak before, I am a bit of a storyteller. I literally was standing in the library of the hospital where I worked as an ER nurse, and in the middle of the night doing a lit search for my manager. And this is back in the old days when we didn't have the internet. We, did manual things like photocopying and searching for articles. And I saw a new magazine that had just come out called Computers in Nursing. And I kind of went, what? And I picked it up, I flipped through it and went, ding, ding, ding. I loved computers. I had my very first computer was a compact portable. I will tell you that portable machine weighed 25 pounds and had no hard drive. And literally looked in the back of the magazine, saw some programs in nursing informatics, made a copy of it, took it home, talked to my husband, and 3 months later, I moved to Maryland. I was in Seattle, moved to Maryland because there were no online programs. So I did a nursing informatics program, postmaster certificate that was supposed to be a year and a half long, and I did it in 10 months through some negotiation. That's a whole nother story. But negotiation skills are very good because I negotiated my way through that. They had something that they needed me for, and I had something that I wanted, and we negotiated it. Now, what was truly fortuitous about this, and this is something I want all of us to keep in mind. So I got through my schooling. I went to work for a consulting firm, was there for about a year, and came down with rheumatoid arthritis. Now, that's not to get sympathetic or anything like that, but that would have killed my ER career. I would have had to stop. Luckily, I had already started a career change. So we don't really know what life is going to hold and what challenges are going to get handed to us or what things are going to change at the drop of a hat. A few years later, literally, my life changed again when we had to move my father in with us. I was traveling almost full time at that point in time, and I had to make another career decision. So the more things that you can put in your skill set that will allow you to handle these changes, I strongly recommend you be really conscious about keeping up your education, expanding your skill sets, because you don't know when these things are going to happen to you. And all of it worked out well for me. But I did have to make some career switches I didn't intend. I had to get off the road as a consultant. I ended up teaching nursing in an associate degree program for 2 years. Loved that job. Loved it, loved it, loved it, except for the salary. I know the story. We won't go there. Now, this was the informatics skill set that was needed when I switched into informatics. It was all about implementing ERs, and that was it. So project management was big, systems analysis, life cycle was big. These were the skill sets you really needed at that time. But Eric brought us some excellent data that, yes, those skills are still needed, but they're moving. The target is moving again, and that's something I strongly recommend to all of you, is to watch the trends and the targets. There was a time 4 years ago, 3 years ago now maybe, where Epic implementers could be pulling down $300,000 a year. I had friends pulling down that much, and the next year they couldn't find a job because suddenly the big implementations were over. I live in the Dallas area. We've only got one big implementation left, and that's Baylor. They're going to rip out all scripts, implement Epic, and all the big implementations are done in the Dallas area. In fact, this was a slide that I used in a keynote presentation I did at the American Nursing Informatics Association back in 2012. And I was talking about power and the power of what's next. And back in 2012, I said, you need to be looking at what's next, because there's going to come a day when EHRs are going to be implemented, meaningful use will move to the stick phase, and it's going to be all about the data analysis, data presentation. We got to use the data to improve care and reducing cost. Now it's 2017, and yeah, my futurist viewpoint was right. We are really moving toward that. The implementation skills are still needed, but not nearly as much as they were back in 2012. But the data analytics skills, as Eric showed you in his data, are certainly growing and growing rapidly. But, you know, where do we find these kind of jobs? Where do you look? Well, number one, you've got to look in quality. For those of you that are clinicians, if you can add that data analytics skill set and that quality skill set to your bag of tricks, you will do really well. This is my girlfriend, Sandy Ng. And Sandy knows I do this. So I have her permission. About, oh my gosh, it's 5 years ago now. She came to me and she said, Cheryl, I have the opportunity to take a position outside of nursing in enterprise analytics. And I'm scared. Is this the right decision? I've never worked outside of the nursing department before. You know, should I even consider it? And I went, you are darn straight you should consider it, because this is where it's going. She's now the Associate Director of Enterprise Analytics. Yes, she absolutely feels she made the right decision. She's learned tons and tons, and it truly is about the quality of where we're going. So my rule of thumb for that one is, don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone. Don't be afraid to take a job that maybe you only know half of the skills. That's an opportunity to learn another half. I have taken jobs where I had zero, none of the skill sets. In fact, I will tell you another story. Years ago, I had burnt myself out in ER nursing. This was, probably 7 years into my career. I was working high-level trauma centers. I had burnt myself out, working way too many hours. And I knew I needed to get out of ER nursing, and actually I wanted to get out of nursing altogether for a while. So I literally applied for anything and everything that was not direct patient care, but that needed my expertise in the clinical area. And I truly mean everything. I literally applied for a job as a part-time hospital bill auditor when I had no desire to be a hospital bill auditor and I needed a full-time job. Now, the moral of that story is that in this particular company, the regional director of another division had gone to the person who was interviewing for hospital bill auditors and said, hey, I'm looking for a BSN prepared nurse to do such and such a job. I don't have time to deal with sending out resumes and stuff. So tell you what, while you're interviewing for hospital bill auditors, if you come across a BSN prepared nurse that looks like they would be a good fit for this job, send them over to me. She sent over my resume. They called me up. I got a wonderful 5-year job. I learned a ton of skills that and literally when I went in and interviewed, the person interviewing me says, well, I don't exactly know what the job is. I know what the title is, but we just took this other part that used to be a separate part of the company and now it's under us and we're supposed to manage it. And I don't exactly know what it does, but I know the customers aren't happy. So the job really is fix it. And I went, but what is it? And he went, well, I don't really know. And so I said, what the heck? What's the worst that can happen? I can take this job and I can fail. I took the job. I went to my new boss and said, okay, can you explain to me what it is? He went, nah, I'm sorry, don't have a clue. You just need to figure it out and make the customers happy. I did. I got promoted. It was good. But taking that risk of literally taking a job where there was no job description and even my boss didn't know what they wanted me to do, I've now had 5 jobs like that in my career. And it's fun. Challenging. Makes you gray on occasion, but it's fun. So one of the things that I advise you is think about the industry as a whole. You know, I spent most of my career in acute care, but that's not where our industry is going. Our industry is going out of the 4 walls of the hospital. Think about health systems that are buying up home health. They're buying up provider practices. They're setting up, they're doing all kinds of things. They're setting up small clinics, remote ERs, telemedicine. There's lots of things going on. So really, if you're an acute care person, take off your acute care blinders and look out. Where else can your knowledge and skill set work for you? And one of the things I recommend when I'm mentoring someone is to write down, what are my skill sets? Most nurses do not think of themselves as project managers, but nurses are phenomenal project managers. We manage, 4 to 6 patients a day. We manage all the departments, all the activities that are going to that are going to deal with this patient during this day. When they go someplace, when they come back from someplace, we're actually wonderful project managers. We just don't recognize that skill set. We're also, a lot of us are much better salespeople than we think. We sell every day. We're selling ideas. We're selling patients on their treatment plan, on how they're going to take care of themselves when they get home. That's a skill set. We need to recognize it. So, a big thing to think about. So this is my generation back in the 60s and 70s. This was our motto, hell no, we won't go. Well, of course, at that point, they were talking about the war in Vietnam. Nowadays, that same group is really saying the same thing, but they're saying we're not going to a nursing home. So think about where technology, where data, where we can fit into this new environment of aging in place. One of my classes that I'm teaching right now, it's a doctoral class, and one of my students said they had never heard the term aging in place. And I just was like, okay, so you're obviously not old enough to read AARP magazines or journals, because that's the big topic. Home health, how technology is going to keep us not only healthier, but in our own environments or in environments of our choice, because we still don't want to go where we don't want to go. And that is going to be a huge, huge thing as the next few years come up. Think about telehealth, as Eric talked about. Think about fall prevention technologies, assessment technology, the whole realm of technology-enabled care and new technologies for patient care. These are going to be wonderful and a great place for clinicians who have a wealth of experience in different areas. And I'm not just talking nurses, respiratory therapists, radiology people, physical therapists. There are a wealth of positions out there, even if they don't know it. That's another thing that can be really interesting, is sometimes companies don't know they need you. Sometimes you have to help them understand they need your job. I had no intentions of ever going into the vendor world, ever. That was not on my game plan. But yet about, what is it now, 12 years ago, something like that, a friend of mine from my consulting days called me up and said, I need you to come to work for me. I'm working for this vendor-based company. This is what I need. And I went, I have no skill in that area. And he said, what you don't know, you'll learn. And, I finally just said, well, what the heck? It's a new opportunity for learning. Again, what's the worst that can happen? I said, I'm an old ER nurse. As long as everybody's breathing, we got an airway, we got breathing, and we got circulation, everything else we can work with. So have I taken jobs I didn't like, that didn't work? Yeah. There's some jobs I didn't last 2 weeks at. They're not on my resume. They just turned out to be not a good fit for me. There are other jobs that I took that I had no clue if they were going to be a good fit for me, and turned out to be a wonderful fit. And I got to learn a lot of things. So don't be afraid. Don't worry about what is going to happen. If you take a job and it's not the right job, the world truly doesn't come to an end. It's never stopped my career yet. Look up what the new technologies are. This is one that's coming out of Europe right now. What cracks me up is this has not only got mobility built in, it's got the telehealth component or family visits, the whole social aspect built in, but it's also vacuuming your floors as it's moving around your house, which I think is a brilliant idea. This is a robotic assistant for body assistance. It literally, because it's developed in China, it has to reach down to futon level height to help lift people. Some of the stuff that's out there nowadays, they need clinicians to help them. I still remember one of my first activities at Motion Computing, as Jerry said earlier, he met when I worked for Motion Computing. I was working with the engineers and they showed me a foam core model of the C5 portable computing device. And I immediately balanced it on my hip and started picking things up and putting it on top of the foam core model. And they went, what are you doing? And I said, if this thing is flat and I'm carrying it, it's going to be a tray. And the engineers went, no, clinicians aren't going to use it that way. And I said, yes, they are. So a lot of what I have done in the vendor world is to work with engineers, and believe me, I love engineers, I'm married to one, but is to help them understand how we would truly use a product, especially in that design phase. Because all of a sudden that just kicked off their brains and went, oh my God, if they're going to do this, then we need to make sure of this, and we need to make sure of this, and da-da-da-da-da. So there's job opportunities out there that you might not have ever even thought of. One of the things that I recommend absolutely is never stop learning. Keep learning, adding new skills to your skill set. You cannot be complacent in today's world. A very nice man that I knew, good guy, in sales, made his quota, never ever considered that he would lose his job, but he did. He was laid off in a riff. And he asked me, called me up and he said, hey, we're about the same age. Are you always looking for your next job? And I went, absolutely. I need to keep my skills sharp. I need to keep my eye on the market. absolutely have to do it. So look for opportunities. They're everywhere now. Can you learn data analysis on the internet? Absolutely. Maybe not everything about it, but you can learn a lot. That power of education, non-academic skills, such as negotiation, sales, behavioral styles, i.e. dealing with people, data analysis and presentation. These are some wonderful skills because we do these kind of things every day. We are negotiating and selling every day that we do. This is just a recommendation. I really like Charles Karas's books. And you can check them out of your library and read them. There's online courses that you could take. There's certification programs. There's degree programs. Please just don't stop learning. You might want another degree, whether it's a master's degree, a bachelor's degree, a doctoral degree. That may be in your future. I didn't finish my PhD till right before I turned 50. And I told my husband I did not know if there was going to be a single dime of ROI in that degree. I just wanted it. And he was like, go for it. You've never called it wrong yet. And indeed, I didn't. I am so thankful that I got my doctorate, because now it's led me to where I am in the last phase of my active career. And networking. Eric mentioned this. I can't emphasize it enough. And network not just with people like you. Network with other people. Network with people outside of your comfort zone. Again, I love this picture of the dog and the cat. I'm a kitty person. I got lots of cats. But network with lots of people, because you never know who knows who and where your next job will come from. Believe me, I have learned that one. Eric talked about this, so I'm going to skip over it, but absolutely concur. Also, the power of professional associations. They are your shared voice for your discipline and your specialty, and they really help build your network. And if you're volunteering, you can gain a lot of experience in new areas. I have been active in professional associations literally since I was president of the Student Nurses Association back when I got my basic nursing degree. And it's not only allowed me to meet people, but it has taught me tons of skills along the way. And it's allowed me my mentors. And if you can mentor someone else, do it. There's a true joy in mentoring and knowing what you're worth. If you don't have a good network of peers, you don't know what you're worth on the job market. I could tell you some stories on that one. And lastly, in the last of this, always believe in yourself. That's what allows you to take those jobs that you don't really know what's going to happen in them. Because I believe I'm going to be successful. If I don't know something, I believe I can learn it. And I can find somebody to teach it to me. And that I will be successful. I really want to say today, thank you so much for the gift of your time. If there's questions out there in the audience, we have a few minutes left. I did run 2 minutes over. Sorry about that. But I will turn it back to Jerry. Jerry, do we have any questions in the audience or anything we can answer that Eric or I can answer for folks?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you both, Cheryl and Eric, for your presentations. I think, you both come from different experiences, different perspectives in the market. And I think that kind of speaks to something, that Cheryl talked about, is that don't just network with people like yourselves. I think that a couple of key takeaways that I found here is, whether you're looking for a job or not, you should be prepared, watching the trends and thinking ahead. And Eric, I think there was some pretty interesting data that you had there, and and a lot of things for people to think about. We do have a couple of questions here, and I put them in the chat box. If you got questions, bring them up. But one of the questions is, obviously, Eric, you have access to that data because of your role as a recruiter and working for a recruiting firm. How would an individual find any of that kind of information to kind of look towards the trends?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways to get that data. Like HIMSS, a lot of my presentation I pulled right out of the HIMSS annual leadership report. HIMSS also does workforce planning, workforce survey work through their data analytics department. So HIMSS has a great database, and I don't know how your chapter, like involvement or how your individual memberships would give you access to that data, but that's how I pull out of that data. Going to the HIMSS local chapter meetings, going to the HIMSS national meetings is where I get connected to a lot of the data. So a lot of the stuff I presented, yes, I pay for an aggregate service or my company does, but just as much of the data behind it is really just coming from articles I'm reading, paying attention to. I think Becker's and his talk and the HIT news. There's just a lot of good data sources out there that'll tell you what's happening. So yeah, you might not be able to get that specific data without going through like a recruiting partner or a firm that has access to that information. But I think just really being connected and going to those industry trade shows and events, you're going to hear where the trends are at, where they're going, what the job scene looks like. And I think Cheryl, you also said it, but you should always have a recruiter or two that you know. Even if you're the happiest person in your job, you never know when an M&A activity is going to come along and your department gets shut down. You never know when something could happen where you're all of a sudden left looking for a job when you never thought you were going to have to. Recruiters have access to good data. Recruiting firms that are plugged in and are experts in their space will be able to tell you what's going on, what you should look for, and then help you build a transition path or plan in terms of what skills you need to acquire in order to get there. So just some thoughts that I have on that question, Jerry.
Well, and I want to add to that. If you don't mind, I'd like to add to that. I always work with my local recruiters and recruiters that I find to be, good, honorable types of people. When they help me and I help them, because I may not be interested in the job, but I may have a friend that is. So, and someday down the road, I may need them. So I find it valuable to work with my recruiters.
Okay, great. And both of you, you talked about the value of networking, and I want to give you a shout out for mentioning HIMSS and getting involved in the local chapter. And that's really what we're trying to build more involvement in the state of Michigan in our Michigan HIMSS chapter. So look at our website. You see we've got an event coming up in December. We just ran in Detroit area. We ran one up in the UP. Attend these webinars and get active, and I mean real active in your local chapter. Somebody asked a question if it was possible to receive copies of the presentations. I believe the answer is yes, but remember that we've recorded the webinar, and we'll have a link to the recording on our website. So if you go to Michigan HIMSS, you can pull that down. There is a question here from Christine, and maybe Christine, if you're still on, if you could help us elaborate, but it said, what about management or leadership opportunities? And you typed that in while Eric was presenting some of the data. So I'm guessing you're asking kind of what the outlook might be for management or leadership opportunities, but if I got that wrong, then elaborate a little bit in the chat box for us.
Well, and I don't know if her phone's unmuted, Jerry, or not, or if I'll see it in the chat box. I'll pop it open. But the reality is, if you look at all the trends and all the job sources and all the data, it all points to there's going to be increased demand for manager level, director level, even C-suite level. You're seeing the CISO role, Chief Information Security Officer or Chief Security Officer role start to become a dominant position in organizations. CMIO came onto the scene 3, 4, 5 years ago. CNIO roles now are starting to follow suit. So high level, kind of roles that are happening. So I think leadership roles and honing your leadership skills is critical. And some of it's simple, right? All you have to do, once again, there's great books and great articles on leadership, but the biggest trait and one of the biggest characteristics of leadership is communication skills. And I think that's one of the easiest to master. So again, the job prospects and growth in manager, director, and above leadership roles within healthcare IT, it's a great place to be. and certainly an area that I would encourage people to start to pursue.
Okay, perfect. And Christine did chat that we got the question correct. So I believe that's all the questions we have, unless anybody pops one in here. But we're right at the top of the hour, and I love to stay on time. So at this point, I want to just thank everybody who attended for being here. Hopefully, you found some value. Maybe give you some food for thought of how you need to kind of think about your life, in going forward, and how you want to keep yourself relevant and current, and stay active in your local HIMSS chapter. Again, Cheryl and Eric, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.